How do you make sure a leadership decision survives Monday morning?
Most leadership decisions are handed down instead of developed. And so you think about this when we go into a meeting and we say, I want to collaborate on a decision. I want to collaborate on what our next steps are, right? Most leaders walk in and say, here's what I think we need to do. Everybody in the room says, yeah, that's what we need to do. That's not collaboration. That's compliance. What collaboration is when the ideal is birthed in the room, when it's developed in the room.
Welcome to Z-Rated Success, the decision lab for education leaders. We break down real decisions and rebuild better outcomes. The decisions that do not come with a handbook. Visit ZRatedSuccess.com. And now, with your host, Nick Zizi.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Z-Rated Success, the decision lab for education leaders. Wade, I'm excited about today's conversation, and everyone joining us is in for a real treat. You bring 43 years of experience in education and have served schools from nearly every seat, from the classroom to the superintendent's office. Now in retirement, you're using those experiences to advise and support superintendents and their leadership teams through your work with Matt Yeager and MJYC. We'll talk about your leadership journey, the importance of listening and shared leadership, and why strong visions sometimes lose momentum during execution. Wade, I'm glad you're here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I am super excited to be able to have this conversation with you today, and just thank you for all that you're doing for public education.
Awesome. So after 43 years in education, what is one moment that still reminds you why you chose to dedicate your life to this work?
Well, I think that when you start saying over 43 years, but I think back to a moment that we were in a advisory council that I had with my students. We called it the Panther Council because our mascot was Panthers. And we were going through an exercise and some work on student voice and having students be involved in the decision-making that we were making as a district. And I had one of our young men that told me at the end of that work, I've heard people talk about having student voice. I've heard about students supposedly having a voice, but I never felt like I did until now. And he goes, Mr. Stanford, I now know how to advocate for myself, and I will be an advocate for myself going forward. And Nick, I think that just reminds us that students are the driver for everything. And we talk a lot about things in education, but putting them into practice and making sure that they're actionable steps is very, very important.
So can you tell us a little bit more about that particular student, or just students in general that have kind of helped you realize the why as to why you're doing this, why you went into education?
Oh yeah. And so I think when you look at students and if as a leader in a district, a leader on a campus, leader in a classroom, if you involve yourself and you get close to your students and you give them a platform to talk, what I've noticed is that they will share with you. They will talk to you. They will be very honest with you. A lot of people dismiss student voice thinking that it's not mature. Nick, they're very mature. They will be very honest with you. And so I think that as a superintendent, the last 10 years of my journey over that 43 years was as a superintendent. And so it was very intentional about being on campus, visiting with students and asking them their opinion, doing it on purpose, being very laser focused about that. And and they just give you real honest feedback. I think adults a lot of times get tempered. Adults get conditioned that they're going to tell you what they think that you want to hear. Students don't really care about that. They tell you what's on their mind. And so that's real important. We had another case where walking down the hallway, I asked a student how things were going. And if very early in the school year, and they said, well, not very good because our laptops that we have for dual credit aren't serving our purpose. Well, I put a team together and they came and they listened to those. We were able to adjust and buy new laptops for them that served their purpose. And they thanked us at the end of that for actually honestly listening. So that all started with a conversation going down a hallway.
Conversation going down the hallway, and how important is that? So when we think about educators, I usually think about, well, if you're making an impact in the lives of your students, right, and you're listening to them, getting the feedback, did you have that type of educator when you were a student that you
I
think of?
did. I did. And you're taking me down memory lane now. So Mrs. Walker, sophomore English teacher, listened to us. She valued us. She made us feel important and made us feel like we had a place in her classroom. And I don't know that there was really an intentional piece on my part to duplicate that, but I know that it made a difference in my life.
And usually, sometimes educators don't realize the impact that they can make on a student. What would you say when it comes to an educator? It could be a football coach. It could be someone just on faculty who may not be teaching in the classroom, but someone who's there on campus. What type of impact do you feel that educators can make on students?
Oh, Nick, the piece that educators, and I think we've got to look at every person that's in a district as an educator. That goes from the bus driver that's the first person to see them in the morning, who has an opportunity to smile. And that may be the one and only smile that student sees all day long. It doesn't even have to be a word to them, but a smile. To the cafeteria worker that's providing them food, to the paraprofessional, to the front office staff, to educators in the classroom, professionals in the classroom. Sometimes we get caught up with educators and we think that that's a teacher. Well, this is every single person. And I think we have to think about impact, because there's impact and our words are powerful. Our words will impact one way or the other, either in a positive way or a negative way. And we can say something offhanded and something that we think that's funny, having no idea what a student is carrying from the house. And it could be very powerful, negative. And so I think there's the listening piece, but there's also the understanding piece and the piece of hearing students. Sometimes we just listen, but we don't understand and we don't hear. And so I think we have to be careful that when we speak, we're pouring into them one way or the other. And I think our job is to pour hope, aspirations and dreams into them, and to let them know that they have an opportunity to succeed and to be better than they ever dreamed that they could be. And so we can do that through our words.
So I want to go back to something you said there. Listen to understand. Did I get that right?
Yes.
And what does that look like, to listen to understand?
Yeah. So, Nick, I think that when we listen to understand, and this is for students, this is for adults, this is for parents when we're visiting. I think when we listen to understand, we're watching body language, because when people speak, so much of it is their emotions, so much of it is their feelings. And so they communicate through body language. They also communicate when they stop a sentence. Because now they're moving into territory that's hurtful, fragile, could be an area that they're damaged. And so they stop a sentence. And so we have to listen to understand that. We have to watch to understand. And then I think there's this piece of we have to interject ourselves into their moment. And that's empathy. That's understanding where they're coming from. And so I think all of those pieces are so important. I've talked to our leaders over the years about listen for what they don't include in the conversation.
Hmm.
Listen for what they don't include, because what they're not including is where the pain starts or the hurt starts or where we've offended them.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to give them space that's safe to explore that.
Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges that I've found over the years is that sometimes it's kind of hard to make those connections to figure out what our students are dealing with if we've never experienced what they're experiencing. So then how do we do that? How can we make that connection?
Yeah, and so I would say that that's very true. And if we've not experienced, like I've never had to experience a situation in which I don't have electricity due to funds. I've done it because of storms and things like that. I've never had to experience waking up and knowing that the only food that I'm going to have is what the school is going to provide.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had to experience that I can't make one more trip to school because I don't have enough gas to
Mm-hmm.
do it. Those are all things that I've tried hard to sit and understand and build a relationship with students, staff, and parents and community members where they can share that and I can sit in that. And so I think there's a part of being still and sitting in that and trying to feel their emotions, Nick, because I don't know what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was a campus leader and I had this rule that if you had a discipline issue, you had to come and meet with me face to face.
Mm-hmm.
And I called a parent to set that meeting up, and they said, Mr. Stanford, I don't have enough gas to make an extra trip to the school.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
I have to choose whether I'm going to come up there or whether I'm going to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Changed my whole perspective on things.
Hmm.
And so I immediately revamped that and said, we'll meet over the phone. And because in the end, my rule didn't fit that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a piece that we have to really, really understand where they're coming from. And I think it's building a relationship where they'll be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so to do that, that relationship has to be built way before that time that you're going to have that conversation.
So how do you build the relationship?
Time.
Time.
You gotta pour time into it, and you gotta give space. And then I think there's the other piece as an administrator, we gotta quit talking,
Mm-hmm.
and we gotta quit telling our rules and our regulations and our philosophy, and we gotta give them a space to talk to us. And that's where we listen.
And that goes both for students and staff, right?
And parents
And
and
parents.
community members.
Okay.
It's everybody, Nick. It's everybody. We forget the students so much, but
Mhm.
a lot of times we think that we're an authority figure, and when we've got parents, we're the ruler, we're the authority figure, we've got it all. But
Yes.
man, parents are dealing with things right now that we've never dealt with. And so I think you have to know your community, you have to know what's going on, and you have to give them an opportunity to visit with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times we're looking at our watch trying to stretch and get out of that meeting. And what I would say is you need to sit in that meeting and you need to experience it with them.
But what if I don't have time? What if I'm too busy? Like, I have so much on my plate. What do I do? How do I do that?
Yeah. So I think as a leader, we do have a lot on our plates. Leader, there are a lot of things we have to do. What I would say is you do an audit of the things that you're trying to accomplish
Mm-hmm.
and determine what somebody else can do better than you. May not do it as well, but they can do it better.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody else needs that opportunity to grow. Somebody needs that, and some things that you've taken on that you're just hanging on to because you think you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I would I would submit that we're taking a lot of things as a leader that we don't need to, that other leaders on the campus can do. And we had a philosophy that everybody was a leader in our district. And so we established leadership opportunities for other people. And so I would submit, Nick, that you don't have the time not to listen, because what you're going to end up doing is doing a lot of other tasks that you don't want to do because you're not taking the time to listen.
So
it starts to compound the problem.
So you mentioned something there about making time or giving space or giving them opportunities to lead.
Yeah, it was one of our core beliefs in our district. It's a belief that I had before. And when we were developing that in 2016, when I first got there, it really resonated with me. Like, it wasn't my ideal, but it came through a process in which we were developing those core beliefs and putting those on paper. But Nick, every single person is a leader. Everybody has leadership capacity. Sometimes that's one of the things that we're working on in our advising and consulting piece, is uncovering those leadership capacities. But you, as a leader, if you want to be a highly effective organization and a highly effective leader, then you need to have shared leadership. And that's not delegating and just giving people tasks, but that's honestly giving them leadership opportunities. And students can lead, teachers can lead, parents can lead, community members can lead if you give them that opportunity.
So now, what have you found to be the struggle, the challenge that leaders have with that, right? Because some leaders don't believe in the shared opportunities or shared leadership. What do you find is the reason behind that? Do you think?
So let's be real here. It's ego. It's ego. To be a leader, you have to have an ego. There is no doubt. You've got to be brave. You've got to believe, and you've got to believe in yourself, and you got to believe in your capacity. I think it's when that ego gets out of control and you start to harbor things because you don't feel like you can release those. I think the other piece is that when you have distributed leadership and you share that leadership, you're opening that up to people to have ideals that you haven't vetted. And so they're going to suggest ideals to you on the fly, and you've got to be okay with that. And I think that's one of the things that we did well. It's one of the things that I look forward to doing, is helping leaders create that with their leadership teams, where those leadership meetings and times of collaboration become more collaborative and more where the leader is not having all the suggestions and the ideals.
There's so much to unpack there. I wish I could stay there a little bit longer. Actually, you know what? I would love
Let's
to
do
have
it. Let's stay there.
Let's stay there, because I would like to have you back on, because I do have other questions. Let's stay there. So how is that done? Like, how does that look like in real life? How do we do that?
Yeah. And so I think one is creating this environment that is safe, open, transparent, and vulnerable, where every single person in the room is valued and their opinion is valued. And you open it up where everybody feels like they are contributing. Typically, what I have found, Nick, is the best ideas come from people the furthest away from the problem, because the people right on top of the problem get clouded and they get tunnel vision. The person that's furthest away from that problem can see it clear. Hey, I'm sitting here trying to think of what the specific piece that we were trying to solve, but it was something operationally on a campus. And our director of maintenance came up with the best idea because he wasn't clouded by the educational think that we have, because we think it has to be this way because we've always done it this way, or we do this. But he came up with the best ideal, and we were able to embrace that ideal and use that ideal. And so I think it's creating that environment, and that means that quite honestly, and we started this when I was coaching, when I was a athletic director, head football coach. We talked about checking our egos at the door. Leave our egos at the door. When you walk in, no one has an ego. Everybody's equal. Every ideal is valuable. We may not accept every ideal, but every ideal is valuable and needs to be heard. Because Nick, in most decision making, when you put a problem out, the first person to speak is assumed to be the expert, and that ideal is adopted because everybody in the room thinks, oh, that's got to be the right way, even though it's counter to what I was thinking. But people adopt that ideal. And so I think it's hard work. We started in 2016, and I would say it took us probably 3 years to really, really create that environment where everybody in the room felt like their opinion mattered and they felt like the work that we were doing was real important. We put things in place like leadership development. So we did book studies every single year with our leadership team. And so everybody's ideals counted as we discussed those books. I think there's just a lot of ways to do that. But the first thing is the ego of the leader has to go away. That's it.
The ego of the leader has to go away. And I remember several years ago, I read a line that says, ego is edging God out.
That's exactly right. It is edging God out. And so I think, and that's a piece that we did, I think well, is we had a spiritual aspect to every one of our meetings. That was openly talked about in our meetings, and that's how vulnerable people got. And so I think God has a plan for all leaders. God has a plan for my life, and I'm trying to follow that plan. And when my ego gets in the way, then it's my plan instead of God's plan.
That's powerful. So you also mentioned something here that tried to make sure I wrote it down, but I couldn't get everything. You mentioned every ideal is, what was the last part of that?
Valued. Respected. Yeah. Yeah, that's so important because so many people in education, I'm talking education because that's what I know. So many people in education feel like their ideals, because of their position in the organization, are not valued or respected, so they keep quiet.
And I've found that sometimes if we don't allow them to share their opinions or suggestions, and if we don't show that we're considering it, sometimes they don't share at all. Like they don't care. They're not listening.
Right. And then in turn, they will go out and tell people they don't listen and they don't care. And I'm going to tell you the other thing that I think is real important, Nick, is somebody suggests something, somebody puts an idea out, a thought out, a plan out. It may not work. It may not be feasible. We might not be able to adopt it. And we owe them an explanation of why we can't. Because they lets them know that we considered it, we listened, and here's the reason I couldn't implement that.
That's good.
And a lot of times leaders get scared of that because they think they're justifying it, which you're not. It's honoring the person that suggested it. Think about it. In any relationship you're in, and you suggest something and the person goes, okay, thanks, and walks away, you're like, dude, they never even heard me. They didn't even listen to me. But if they say, well, I don't want to go eat at XYZ because of this, then you go, okay, they heard me. I may still be upset I can't go there, but I at least understand why.
That is powerful. I mean, for me, I'm looking at, I'm looking at different areas, different organizations that I'm a part of. So not just on campus, but in other organizations where I'm leading, and I can see how I can apply that there as well. What, of all the roles you served in, which one most shaped the way you eventually led as a superintendent?
Wow. So they all played a part in it. I think I took something from every single role And I would have to say that probably as a teacher and as a campus administrator, seeing the good and the bad,
Mm-hmm.
the the examples of great leadership and not so great leadership helped change that role. And I was under some great leaders, and I was under some great leaders that I don't feel like did everything the way I would like it done. And so I shaped things differently, but I can remember as a teacher and as a campus leader, that's both assistant principal and principal, that really shaped it because I wanted to remember what it was like to be a teacher. So when I filtered everything that I was doing, I had to say, what's this going to feel like for a teacher?
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So what did it teach you about decision making?
That so many times in decision making, we try to do it in a silo and we do it independently. And you better have a lot of voices involved in that decision making. And it better be a collaborative piece because everybody has a different perspective and you need to hear them all and you need to take them all into consideration when you're doing it. And a great example of that, we were getting ready to revamp our literacy program. And there were approximately 20 to 25 people in the room when we did that. And it was all the way from instructional coaches and leadership all the way up to my office. And I talked the least of anybody in there. And Nick, the person that led that group, that was superintendents, assistant superintendents, directors, campus principals, assistant principals, counselors, instructional coaches, was an instructional coach that led that group. And you wouldn't think that an instructional coach would lead that group, but we had an instructional coach, Brooke, that led that group because, number one, she was the most knowledgeable of literacy. She had a great command of it, and everybody else, and she knew the path that she felt like she knew the path that we should go, and she led it, and everybody embraced her as a leader, and she embraced that leadership role. And I think that said that our belief statement that everybody's a leader in our district, they just lead from where they're at, came to life that day, and that over that time period.
So was there a role that was much more difficult than you expected?
Yes. I think every one of them at some point in time early on is much more difficult than you expect because you don't know what you don't know. So I think as a leader, you've got to understand that when you step into a new role, you're going to feel overwhelmed during the first year, no matter how much you've prepared, no matter anything. It's every leadership role is a hard role for a while until you learn what you don't know. But I think a campus principal was probably the hardest. High school campus principal was the hardest. That day started at about 5 o'clock in the morning with emails from the night. And I probably made 40 to 50 decisions walking down a hallway. And you're never going to make everybody happy. And every decision is a critical decision. Because if you're a high school, you're the flagship of the district and everybody looks to it. All the athletic pieces, all of the extracurricular pieces, all of the academic pieces, the accountability pieces, the curriculum pieces. And you typically, I can remember back ending my night around 11 o'clock looking at emails. That was dumb. I changed my philosophy on all that stuff as I got a little bit more mature. But yeah, that part was probably the toughest and harder than I ever thought, even though I served as an assistant principal for 3 years, thought I knew everything. When I got there, I didn't know anything. And so that part was hard. It was really hard. That's when I developed high blood pressure, Nick. And so
Wow. Wow. Oh my. Okay. So I mean, have you grown from that experience?
Sure.
How have you changed? What have you changed from that time?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think during that time, number one, the collaboration on decision making became more and more important to me. And I understood the power in that and understood that I needed a lot more people sitting in the room. I think I also understood that you had to be more vulnerable than you've ever been. People need to see the real side of you, need to understand the struggles that you're feeling, and you've got to talk about the struggles. And so that happened. I think the other piece that really shifted was self-care, taking care of yourself and understanding that you can't run like that every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that, we developed some stuff in our district that I was in last that we actually embraced and even told parents the same thing, but we stopped all professional communication at 5:00 in the afternoon. There was not a professional email, text message that went out. If you're friends with people, you could do whatever you want to, but no professional communication after 5:00 in the afternoon. Start until 7:00 the next work day. So that meant on Friday afternoon, there was no professional communication that went from 5:00 in the afternoon on Friday till 7:00 Monday morning. We made some exceptions because I knew as a campus principal, there was a weekly email that went out that showed the schedule and showed all the stuff. And I told them they could still send that out on Sunday because things changed over the weekend. But that was the only exception. And we actually asked our parents to respect that for our teachers so that they could have a life and they could be a mom, a dad, a parent, whatever they needed to do, they could do. And so I think that changed for me.
That's great. So did you have any parents who still reached out, called, text?
Oh, no, Nick, they all embraced it. No, no. No,
Okay.
of course, we still had people that violated that piece, but I will say that our administrators pushed back on it to start with, and they said, well, we've got to work after that time. I said, I'm telling you, you don't need to work, but if you want to work, you can work.
Mhm.
Just don't send emails, don't send text messages. And then during an admin meeting, I said, I'm going to show y'all this cool piece. It's called where you can schedule an email. And so what we saw is our emails blowing up at 7:00 in the morning because people were doing some work and they would schedule them to go out at 7. But I think the biggest piece is one of our administrators came into one of our administrative meetings and said, my husband said at church that 5 to 7 rule was the best thing for our marriage.
Wow.
And so, we talked about that. We talked about being where your feet are and finding a rhythm. Nick, we never talked about finding a balance, but we talked about finding a rhythm because when you're at work, you need to be at work. When you're at the house, you need to be at the house. So that's where your feet are. Wherever your feet are, be there. And then we talked about the rhythm because if you had meet the teacher night, well, you're there at probably 7:00, 7:15 in the morning, and you may be there till 8:00 at night.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you can't duplicate that the next day, so you start feeling like you defeated the balance because there's not a balance. But the next day, let that rhythm flow so that you leave at 4:30, and when you get home, you're there for your spouse, you're there for your kids, you're there for your parents, whomever you need to be there for, you're there for them, and you pour into them.
So being wherever your feet are and also finding rhythm.
Rhythm, yeah. John Gordon came up with that. I read a lot of John Gordon stuff and listen to his podcast.
Mm-hmm.
He actually is the one that I stole no, I don't have anything that's original. I steal everything I've got, but he's actually the one that I borrowed that find a rhythm instead of balance. Balance is unachievable. You will never find balance in your life. There is not a work-home balance. Never. But you can find rhythm.
Rhythm. Yep.
Yeah.
This is great. Now, what do teachers understand about schools that district leaders sometimes overlook?
Yeah. That it's hard, and we make it harder for them because we ask things of them that don't have a return. And so we have to look and analyze what all we're asking. And we also don't do a good job of auditing that and removing things that have piled up year after year after year after year, leadership after leadership after leadership. A campus principal comes in and says, you have to do this, XYZ, whatever it is. And a new leader comes in 2 years later. They still believe they have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to go back periodically and do what we would do is put everything on a board and say, what are we asking you to do? And they would put it all on a board, and everybody would look around and go, who's asking them to do that? And nobody in the room was asking them to do that. And we said, take that off the list, take that off the list, take that off the list, and find the things that are really, really going to impact instruction in the classroom. And so I think that audit is something, and I think they understand that a whole lot better. I think they understand student behaviors today better than we ever understood them, because we're isolated from them. We don't see it. And so as a campus leader, as a district leader, you better get in classrooms and understand that student behavior and start finding solutions to help teachers out. Student behaviors, Nick, have changed radically from over the last several years.
So what I've found is that oftentimes when a student misbehaves, it's because of a burden or something that they're dealing with that's causing them to act a certain way. So how can leaders, educators help our students who may have some behavioral issues on campus to get back on track?
Yeah, and I think you're spot on. I believe that the majority of the behaviors that happen in the classroom, that happen on a campus, are not driven from something that specifically happened in that classroom. Is a carryover from either a relationship, something done at the house, whatever. And so one of the things that we worked at, did this as an assistant principal, and then tried to pass it on and help our principals learn this, is that I think a process of when a student comes to the office, that student goes through an exercise in which they write down exactly what happened, what did they do, and how would they keep from doing that again in the future. I found was they wanted to tell me everything that happened except for what they did. And so they would go back and rewrite, and they had to fill that out before I ever visited with them. And so then it was coming in, and it was listening to them and understanding what they did, reshaping that conversation so that that student could see what they did, and then understanding how in society that is wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and how in schools that is wrong, and then how they can put pieces in place that would keep them from doing that again. And so I think having that student work through that is so, so important. I can tell you all day long, this behavior is wrong, and here's what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going, yeah, right, okay, sure. But if you work through that process and you come up with those steps, there's a lot of power in that. And then at the end of that comes the discipline. Most administrators start with the discipline right off the bat, and the student's not ready to listen after that
Mm-hmm.
because they're already mad over the discipline. And so even when I was doing it, I said, we've got through this, and now there needs to be some consequences for your actions, because we can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, yes, sir, I understand. And I said, well, what are you thinking would be the appropriate consequence for this? And they would come up with like ISS or suspended from school. And I would go, well, I was just thinking of a detention after school, but if that's what it's going to take to get you to change your behavior, then we'll do that. And they'd go, no, detention's great. And I say, okay. And so they felt like they had some ownership in that. And I think that's a part when we start talking about behaviors, is having some ownership in that. Now, that doesn't work with every student.
Mhm.
and we have to involve parents, but parents need to be involved in that ownership with that also. So, so I think it's listening. I think it's trying to figure out why they did what they did. And if you sit there and ask them, why did you do this? The first three answers are not going to be the reason they did it. And they'll eventually tell you, well, I just broke up with my girlfriend. And then you have a conversation at that point.
So we're going to transition. So from vision to execution, you have said that vision is the easy part and execution is where leadership actually gets tested, right? So
Right.
why do so many strong school initiatives lose momentum before they meaningfully reach classrooms?
Yeah. So I think that we all sit in visioning sessions. We all do a great job of casting a vision.
Mhm.
But Nick, it's like walking into a jungle when you start executing that vision. And there's lots of forces that are fighting that. And if you've ever read the Four Disciplines of Execution, it talks about the whirlwind of the day starts to take over. And so the whirlwind of the day, student that acted up, the parent that called, the superintendent stopped by, whatever, all those things start to distract you from carrying that execution of that vision or that initiative out. That's what starts to hurt leaders, is getting caught up in the whirlwind
Mhm.
and not staying laser focused on that initiative, and then not distributing it out so that there's people that can carry those tasks out, and they try to do it all themselves and they can't do that. I think through the coaching and advising that Matt and I are doing at MJYC, we have this piece that where we come in and we listen to a superintendent. We understand where they're trying to go. We're going to visit with their cabinet. We're going to visit with their leadership team to see alignment of their vision and what they're hearing.
Mhm.
And then there's a piece that we're going to come back and we will give them a one-pager of where that disconnect is and how we're going to carry that out. And then through systemic coaching conversations, we will stay focused on that. And then looking at your strategic planning and making sure that your initiative aligns to your strategic plan. And then taking those action steps to carry that out and having that accountability week to week is what allows you to be successful. And there has to be a cadence of accountability for any initiative to happen. And I can go a lot deeper into that with lag measures, lead indicators, scoreboards, and cadence of accountability that I think are critical for initiatives to take place.
So speaking of that, of accountability, right? So does the problem begin with communication, leadership alignment, systems, accountability, or something else?
Yeah, I believe it starts with communication, definitely. So I think that probably 90, and I'm going to say 90% of our problems are a communication problem. We think they heard, but the judge of how well you communicated is the actions the person takes that you told, that whatever that initiative was, whatever actions they take. So if we say you're going to be on duty every afternoon at 4:00 and they don't show up at 4:00, we tend to blame them. In reality, it's the leader, in my opinion, it's the leader because they didn't communicate it well enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, well, it's clear. I said at 4:00. Still the fact that person didn't get there at 4:00. And so it comes down to communication, and you have to fix your communication before you can say that people are justifying and not doing it.
Hmm.
So I believe it all starts with communication, to be honest with you.
So then how do you evaluate that? How do you evaluate or determine whether or not it's communication? How can I find this out? Am I going to rely on my staff to tell me, or How will I
Yeah.
know?
Well, so I believe
Mm.
that if I'm sitting there and I say we're going to all be on duty at 4 o'clock, let's say I've got 8 people that are supposed to be on duty. 3 of them don't show up. 5, I know that my communication worked with those 5,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't work with those 3. So I'm going to have to sit down with them and I'm going to understand, where did I fail in my communication? And I think that's a totally different conversation than, Nick, you didn't show up to duty on time. If you don't show up, I'm going to write you up. Versus, man, Nick, I talked to you about this and I told you that we had duty at 4, but somewhere I failed you. Somewhere I didn't get that communicated. Maybe they know the time, but they don't understand the importance. Maybe they don't understand the liability. Maybe they don't understand the challenges that come up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's sitting down and saying, help me help you. Where did I fall short?
Help me help you. Where did I fall short? Okay. So, how do you make sure a leadership decision survives Monday morning?
So communicate. That's a piece. I think if you've got distributive leadership and everybody's involved in that decision making, and you've communicated it out, you've communicated why and how
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of, then it becomes what we do and not leadership decision. It's just what we do. So I think you have to work on doing things that allow you to bring in as many people as you can in making that decision so they can see the value in it. They've had ownership in it. They've had input in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do it instead of you doing it.
Hmm.
So, Nick, most leadership decisions are handed down instead of developed. And so you think about this. When we go into a meeting and we say, I want to collaborate on a decision. I want to collaborate on what our next steps are, right? Most leaders walk in and say, here's what I think we need to do. Everybody in the room says, yeah, that's what we need to do. But collaboration, that's not collaboration, that's compliance. What collaboration is when the ideal is birthed in the room, when it's developed in the room. And a strong leader, a great leader will say, man, we've got this challenge. What are the thoughts that we need to do around that instead of telling people what they need to do? Now, a gifted leader will hear that, know the parameters, and start helping shape the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, I think it's so important that if we're in a collaborative meeting, that the group develops that, the group helps to discern what needs to be done. And what happens is they carry the initiative instead of the leader carrying the initiative. You just can't lead from top down. You can manage, you can dictate, you can direct from top down, but highly effective organizations are led from within, where the staff is helping to lead initiatives.
That is so powerful. I have another question for you, and this is for the superintendent specifically. So, what pressure do superintendents carry that employees, communities, and even members of their leadership teams may never fully see?
Yeah. So I think that's a big question, and it is a lot of pressure that nobody sees. So there's pressure from the state level on accountability, state testing, state mandates. There's pressure at the local level from school boards and elected officials, and trying to navigate that road and still maintain integrity and their values, because they're asked to do things so many times that step outside of that. And most people never see that, never understand that. And then there's pressure from serving every student every staff member, every community member, every parent, and trying to meet the needs of every one of those as they're navigating each one of those levels. And that pressure starts to build up. And it just becomes part of your life. And I'll be very honest with you, you don't even realize how heavy it is until you step away. And so when I stepped away is when I really realized how much it was weighing on me and how I was trying to find and navigate and carry the district forward and be innovative and do new programs. Some staff didn't want to do that. You're trying to bring them along, to navigating the political pressure from the local level, the state level, and maintaining your integrity and your values and your beliefs. And I think that's so important. I don't think people understand the conflict that happens in those.
So how did you cope with the pressure?
Well, prayer was a lot. I'll be very honest with you. I have had a routine. I still have it now, that every morning it was 4:30, and I started with quiet time and prayer, and tried to continue with that through the day and be reminded that I was serving one person, one God, and at the end of the day, if I was pleasing Him, made no difference what anybody else thought. And trying to say that He's the one that placed me there, and I was to lead where I would glorify Him. And then I had trusted people outside the district that I could talk to that would remind me of what my values and my beliefs and my integrity were about.
Prayer works, and also having the right people around you.
Yes.
So powerful.
Wise counsel, people that are older. And so I think when we start looking for counsel, we got to look for people older than us that have experiences that we haven't had.
Absolutely.
We're all at the same level as just two fools talking.
That's right. That's right. And having smarter people, wiser people around us will help us to become wiser, right? If we walk with the wise, we'll be wise. If we walk with fools, we'll be a fool.
We'll be fools. And so I think if you look up and you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so you better surround yourself with wise counsel.
So how did your 43-year experience or journey prepare you for the coaching and advisory work you're doing now with Matt Yeager and JYC?
Yes, I think it staged me to be very impactful in that area. And so I think that, number one, as we start looking at our advising and consulting, we're not one that has the answers. We're ones that develop leaders that learn how to answer. We're developing leaders that develop other leaders, so we multiply leadership. And we will be a trusted thought partner. We'll listen and understand and design a coaching and advising platform that is specific and unique to every single leader. So we don't have a canned piece that we're just saying we're going to come in and do this, but we're going to listen and understand what every single leader needs, and then we're going to help them achieve that and develop their leadership capacity, their decision making, and their ability to grow other leaders. I think that's the sustainable part that we're looking at. We will help develop leaders that multiply leaders and build their bench within their district. And so the success is going to be judged on their leadership capacity, not us solving problems. Everything I've done over 43 years has geared me to do that. And that's the things that we did in our district. I did as a coach, I did as a classroom teacher.
And in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to provide contact information for anyone who may be interested. So I usually ask this question every episode, and because of our time, and we're going to have a second part of this interview, it's called the Knucklehead Decision segment, right? So I know many of us, we've made some knucklehead decisions along the way, and I can share one with you, and perhaps you can think of one as well. So speaking of something you said earlier today in our conversation, sometimes I'll communicate with the team, I'll communicate with our staff at the school, and I'm thinking in my mind, I was clear. What I said, it was very clear, but then I sometimes find some people on the team didn't get it. They just misconstrued what I said. So I still went ahead and continued with the decision without verifying if everyone understood what I said. So that was my knuckleheaded decision. So what was yours?
Yeah, so I think mine is, as a superintendent, is making logistical decisions when we moved into a new building about the placement of parking and vehicles without getting enough input. And I think that caused some stress, and it sounds really dumb, but when we had Suburbans that needed to be taken by staff to different places, I think the place that I said where they needed to be parked, quite honestly, Nick, was just too hard for them to back out of and to pull into. And I think there was a better solution that I was blinded to. And that sounds like a very small decision, but our knucklehead decisions lead to big things.
Yes,
because now we become the person that doesn't listen, doesn't understand.
Yes, yes. So, Wade, as we come to a close, what is your message to the superintendent or education leader who knows the school system must evolve, but feels overwhelmed by the pressure and the resistance and the number of decisions in front of them? What's your closing message here?
Yeah, so I think number one, that's normal. Don't think that you're abnormal. Know that you're normal. Know that that's every single superintendent, and know that you can reach out to me, to Matt at MJYC. We will be a trusted thought partner that can help you navigate that and help coach you and advise you along the path so that we can make that overwhelmed feeling reduced or go away, because we can help develop your leadership capacity, your decision-making model, and help you develop highly effective teams that will make that job very, very enjoyable and impactful.
That's great. So, Wade, where can people connect with you and learn more about the coaching and advisory work you're developing with MJYC?
Stanford, STANFORD, at mjycgroup.com. And they can just shoot me an email there and get back with them, and we'd be happy to sit down and just start having a conversation of, can we help you and how can we help you? And then look at that and explore what that looks like.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know it took us a while to get here. We had a few hiccups along the way, but we would love to have you back on for a second part of the interview. I do believe that all of our listeners have received tremendous value from the years of experience, wisdom, insights that you've shared here today.
Well, thanks, Nick. I've enjoyed it. It's been my honor. I'd love to come back anytime that you have an opportunity to visit with me.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to Z-Rated Success. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show and leave a quick review. To connect with today's guest and get the free Decision Lab toolkit, visit zratedsuccess.com. To bring Nick's Decision Lab keynote or training to your campus, district, or conference, visit nickzizi.com. See you next time.